So if you're looking at this video, the chances are you're somewhat familiar with the story. I'll just get into it. Just Stop Oil has targeted Stonehenge. Now there is an argument to be made that talking about them gives them the attention that they crave, and they sort of take that perverse logic. All attention is good attention, even when it's predominantly bad. Um, And if this was like another stunt, I'd probably let it go. But this is Stonehenge. Okay, it's a World Heritage Site. It's a symbol of this country. I see this as no different than if someone was to target the Great Pyramid at Giza, the Colosseum, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, you name it. Absolutely reprehensible. So what happened was two of them targeted this, 73-year-old professor and a 73-year-old Quaker, actually a 21-year-old student. Um, I've often wondered like if these offshoots kind of just, they don't have a central leadership, although Roger Hallam's behind a lot of these cults. But I wonder how they sort of plan it. That okay, it's Stonehenge tomorrow, and who's up for that? And I do sometimes wonder what goes on in the planning of Just Stop Oil. Um, the problem is you can't put Stonehenge in a bubble. It's in Salisbury Plain. It's a tourist attraction. I'm going to read out what the Daily Mail has put as a headline. This is their headline today. I'm just going to read this out a bit because it's quite revealing. Other papers covered it as well. This is the one I got. Eco-fanatics cause outrage yesterday by defacing Stonehenge on the eve of the summer solstice. No doubt they would have known about that, so again, getting more attention. This Stop Oil activist used fire extinguishers to spray orange powder paint on at least three of the ancient stones before calmly sitting down cross-legged in front of the world-famous site. Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer showed a rare united front for the condemnation of the stunt, in their condemnation of the stunt, which raised new questions about the historically intimate relationship between the Labour Party and Just Stop Oil. The Prime Minister described it as a disgraceful act of vandalism, while the Labour leader branded the group pathetic. Yet Labour was accused of Vox outrage after JSO boasted of planning its action days after the Labour Party recommitted to halting all future oil and gas licences, a policy that activists claim was influenced by their extremist road blocking tactics. Mr Sunak rounded on major Labour backer Dale Vince, who until last year, bankrolled the environmental protest movement. I have a big problem calling it a protest movement. He said this is a disgraceful act of vandalism. Just Stop Oil should be ashamed of their activists. And they and anyone associated with them, including a certain Labour Party donor, should issue a condemnation of this shameful act immediately. Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho added Labour's Fox outrage at the Stonehenge vandalism would carry a lot more weight if Just Stop Oil hadn't also thanked Labour for enacting their demands in their press release today. We must not allow Britain's energy policy to be dictated by fanatics. Labour has accepted more than £5 million from Mr Vince, including £1 million after the election was called. The green energy tycoon supported JSO from its foundation and donated at least £340,000 before cutting off the cash last October. I have little sympathy for him. Incidentally, he has said, since Rishi Sunak has asked me personally to comment, I will. I don't support what JSO done today. Well, I'm sorry, Mr Vince, but they haven't just suddenly switched to these tactics in the last few months. That's always been their tactics. He has a lot to answer for, and I think he should face a lot of heat for it. This is the man who, until last year, bankrolled them. He needs to take some responsibility because, they often what happens with Just Stop Oil is when they're arrested, they get bailed out. That money's coming from somewhere. In the case of Edred Whittingham, who's one of the hardcore activists, he literally was boasting about different forms of arrest and how much, he could be crowdfunded. It's known that the Hollywood producer Adam McKay has funded them. So, they have some powerful backers. I really, really think, firstly, I think they should be proscribed. I don't know why that hasn't happened already. Secondly, I suppose they'll just change their name, but, it would send out a message at least that the government's taking it seriously and the incoming government is taking it seriously. Secondly, I do think the hardcore members should go to prison, absolutely, but it's the problem of prison spaces. That's going to be an issue of all sorts of crimes. Um, it may be in the case of just stop oil, a more novel approach is needed. I do think that their bank funds should be cut off. I do think their assets should be frozen because in the end of the day, they need funded. They have the high visibility jackets, they have the fire extinguishers, they have transport to go to the locations. Um, that all requires some degree of money. Then, of course, the bail money. If they are hit hard financially, it may actually be more of an incentive to think twice rather than getting to feel like they're martyrs by going to prison for a few months. Um, I mean, the problem with that, I think they deserve it, but the problem with it is it gets them to put on this mantle like there's some sort of political martyrs. I really don't think they deserve that. They're just anarchists. Um, when sentencing, which is a subject obviously of strong views on, judges often consider aggravating and mitigating factors. Now, in my view, the fact that these people are repeat offenders, the fact that they have no remorse at all, they make excuses for what they do, that should be an aggravating factor. I don't know what's going to happen to these two, but if it's just like a fine for the damage and a community sentence, that is meaningless. They need to have their bank accounts cut off. They need to be blacklisted. She's an Oxford student. I hope she has a really difficult time finding a job. They need to feel the heat of their actions. They did make statements on why they done it. I frankly don't care. I honestly don't care a single thing that comes out of their mouths. I think they have lost the right to be taken seriously. Um, they can have freedom of speech. That doesn't mean people have to listen to them. And I think one of the mistakes that this country has made with Just Stop Oil is constantly giving them a platform. Um, it has to be said that I didn't cover this story. Now, unfortunately, it is hard to ignore it because it is a World Heritage Site. I give credit, by the way, to the member of the public who tried to intervene. It says here that they went there and a member of the public steps in. Um, I don't know if that's a man or a woman, but either way, respect to them. I would like to think I would do that. I'm not sure what I would do. Certainly, I'd try to knock the extinguisher out of their hands or something. Now, as for the damage, Stonehenge's Facebook page has said they were saddened by what happened and they acted immediately because, although the damage appeared artificial, it can actually affect the lichens that are in the monoliths, and that in turn can cause problems in terms of something to do with the residue. I don't know the exact physics of it, but they acted quickly, and it looks like it's kind of been restored relatively back to normal. And of course, in 5,000 years, Stonehenge will have had all sorts of things like storms and snow and all sorts of elements thrown at it, but that isn't the point. Even if this material that they're using isn't permanent, it's not the point. The point is they obnoxiously think that they've got a right to do this. Now, I would ask some logical questions, such as how do they think that targeting an ancient monument reduces CO2? That's a logical question. But it's a waste of time trying to get logic from Just Stop Oil. I do believe they are a cult. I mean, a group that encourages its members to behave in these sort of stunts, this sort of illogical stunts, um, I honestly think it's cult-like. I don't say that flippantly. I really, really do think it is cult-like. Because with cults, you get this groupthink, you get zero introspection, i.e., zero sense of any sort of remorse or, oh, is this really the right approach? It's this tunnel vision, I am right, I will do. It's robotic. And you see that with Just Stop Oil activists. They have no introspection. You could say to them, you could even agree with them. You could say, I agree with your argument, but not your tactics. And they'll just drone on with the same arguments. Um, I think they're disgusting. And I have to be honest, I find it hard to have much patience with them. Um, I don't think this would be tolerated in any other country. You wouldn't get, like I mentioned, the Great Pyramid, the Colosseum, and go what? In Italy, they give you a big fine even if you sit on ancient Roman seats. So I still feel this country is a soft touch. I would prescribe them. I want I want to see Starmer returning money given to him by Dale Vince, or at least scrutinising, who's funding them more. Vince may have said he stopped funding them, but I don't think that's good enough. I think he needs to go further and actively speak against them, not just a generic, "Oh, I don't approve of what they do." Well, people like him are largely responsible for what they do. Um, they're just vile people. But I'll say one last thing. To those who kind of play the devil's advocate and say, "Oh, I understand their point, but I disagree with the tactics." What is the point exactly? They want us to completely stop all oil-based production. All they would have us in a situation where we are literally regressing backwards to pre-industrial revolution levels. Because if you take their argument to its purest, you would have to discard all plastic. You would have to discard everything that is oil-based. Now, I'm all for cutting down the use of plastic, but what they're demanding just isn't possible. It would bankrupt this country. It's not to their demands. Do they really think they would make a huge difference in the global output? Would it make a difference to India's carbon emissions, to Australia's carbon emissions, China's carbon emissions? It would make a dent, if that, on the global output. um, I just find them infuriating because they're not targeting big oil companies. I don't like Greenpeace, but at least they target the source. At least they're targeting energy companies. With just Stop Oil, there's something very unhinged about them. There's something very, very obnoxious, but